For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here, back on the Scribble podcast, back talking about technology. You know, I was doing these call-outs to the people of my generation, well, the 30s, 40s, and 50s last week on the show. I give out the email address, and I say, if you were able to relate to dial-up internet, VCRs, all the camcorders, all those things, send me an email. I have, for the past week, I have been responding, carrying on wonderful conversations with old people like me, and we're damn proud of it, about just the technology that we were... It was a pain in the ass, let's be honest, but we didn't know that it was a pain in the ass, right? If you were to go back, and I made a comment last week, and I said, if I could live in that bubble of my DVD player, my VCRs, my Golden Girls episodes, my Spice Girls, Backstreet Boys, Aqua, Savage Garden, I remember saying that. I said, if I could live in that era again, same furniture, same everything, like nothing changes. You don't ever have to upgrade a TV. You don't ever have to get a new digital whatever. I would be fine with that. And I mentioned last week that I hate getting a new phone, a new computer, I hate it all. It's because, yes, it should be a good thing, right? Faster, better resolution, whatever. I don't care. I like the stuff that I have. I'm not scared of technology. When my parents had their VCR, we were saying my brothers had their own, in Canada it's called a PVR, Americans call it a DVR. But we had our own PVRs, and we were trying to get our parents, like, just get a PVR. It's so cool. You just digitally, select a show and watch it or record it, whatever. My parents were so resistant. No. For me, I'm not no. Because I know that I know that it's ultimately better for me anyway to upgrade. But for me, it's the comfort. And I'm not being just a curmudgeon like my parents. I'm talking about things like, my computer or whatever is used for business. So when I'm hosting a radio show, if I've got to be in my groove, right, I need things to be familiar. So if it's a new computer and things are all moved around and it's all different, that's what I don't like. See, it's a little bit different. My parents who don't want to learn the new technology, they don't want to, that's different. That, how do I say it? That no is different than my no, or that resistance maybe is different than mine. I'm not against having a bigger, higher resolution TV. Of course, that's cool, right? But it's everything that I've got saved on the one that I have now, or whatever, that's where it's different. When we had to renew our cable TV, like our internet and whatever with our cable company, they said, well, we've got this new digital, blah, blah, blah. And that was my thing, which is, it's not about having to relearn everything. It's just that it's different and it's not all going to be at the same spot. And that's what I'm used to. So same thing with a computer, same thing with a phone. I know where everything is on my phone. And if I need to, and again, because we're producing radio shows or whatever we're doing, I can't be fumbling around and looking for things as I'm talking, because if I know that this is where the folder is and this is, okay, well, that's just what it is. So that's the difference for me. Now, because I've heard from a whole bunch of you on your thoughts, and we're talking everything from, oh yeah, we're talking about downloading porn. We're talking about you can have an entire game on a floppy disk. This is even before the color monitors, and this was back when you had the Jeopardy or the Wheel of Fortune game like my uncle did, and you had Vanna, which wasn't really Vanna, it was just like this one-dimensional figure, and you're playing Wheel of Fortune on that. It was so slow. The fact that she would just creep across the puzzle board and go. But here's the thing. It gave you a lot of time to figure out that puzzle. There was, because you're waiting for her to get out of the way or whatever it was. So we're going to talk about all those things on the anti-technology episode version 2.0 right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
JB here, back on the Scribble. All right, let's talk porn. Let's do it. Let's just talk porn. And I, from what I understand, now here I am married to a very hot, muscular Brazilian fitness model. I admittedly there's no porn on our computers or whatever at home. And that's actually something that we were talking about as well, emails back and forth with listeners, was if you have a desktop computer at home, first of all, is it for your job or school? But when's the last time that you bought a desktop computer for your house? Do you even have a computer at home anymore? Again, I'm not talking about for work. I just think like your own personal computer. Or do you just have a laptop on the couch? Do you have, obviously people who have kids that are in school or whatever, you probably have a laptop. But for yourself, like just for your own sort of use, is the home computer still, a big deal, still a thing? Or is it just laptops and tablets and phones now? That's another question. Send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. So as a young gay teenager who, was kind of craving seeing the nakedness, I kind of wanted to see a peen. I'm not going to lie. And just like the teenage boys wanted to see boobies. And, it was exciting. For me, as a kid, it was mostly, I loved seeing a guy in bike shorts. That was kind of the big thing. Spandex, that was hot. And no different think about it. It's like a guy wanting to see a girl in a bikini. It's tightness. People never understood that, where it was like, well, what's your, fascination with that? Well, you can basically see his cock. I mean, that's what, same, you'd flip that around with a straight guy. Why do you like seeing a girl in a bikini? Okay, it's not hard to understand, folks. And so the internet, obviously, the dawning of AOL, and eventually websites did come around, but AOL, as I mentioned last week, was basically keyword, and then you certainly couldn't do keyword porn. We didn't have Google. You didn't do google.com. There was Alta Vista, I believe was one of them, Internet Explorer. Well, that's still, no, there were a bunch of different kinds of web browsers eventually that came around. But, what would you search for in porn? For me, it was the AOL chat rooms. It was the M for M. And you would go into your country. So there was Canada, US, whatever. Most countries had a category. And then I would go Canada. And this is the thing, there was only a Winnipeg M for M chat room if somebody was in the room. So it's not like there was one just waiting there. Somebody would create it, and then other people would just join. So you would just be sitting there and waiting. And again, it's a very niche audience at that point. There were lots of gay men in Winnipeg, but how many of them were on AOL, at that time? Well, obviously not very many, because you would sit there and the room would be empty. You'd make a room, Winnipeg, I don't know if you could use the word horny, but you would put, whatever, Winnipeg young M for M. And you would just sit there and wait. And you would wait, and you would wait, and you would wait. Your profile, I don't think really had a picture, not at that time, but it would have a description. So it would have your age, you could put a couple things about yourself. And that was really what you based your decision on if you went into the chat room, if you stayed there, if you messaged the person. Now for me, being, just a horny teenager who was ready to do cyber sex and get off, that was fine. It's like, okay, anybody, you could lie very easily, obviously, but it was the image of it, the using your imagination as to who you were talking to, what they were doing and what you were doing. And that was kind of it. That was the big deal, which is you'd have some sort of a sexy name maybe that would either describe you or what have you. Now this is where I got to tell you, we were talking AOL screen names. My brother made me one, and it was, I don't remember, it was not Mr. Fritz. It was something just kind of weird. It was just random names. And then I made one for myself. Now this is the thing. So I didn't realize it at the time. This is how naive I was. My screen name was BJ Dav. Now here's why it was BJ Dav. Let me be very clear, everybody, before you start going, well, gay man, BJ Dav. So people would call me BJ Dave. They thought my name was Dave. B for my last name, J for my first name, David was my middle name. So it was basically like you would have, right? You would have your last name, comma, first name, middle name. Well, that's what I was doing, but I had just used the letters, or BJ Dav. Well, that made me very popular in the AOL chat rooms because people saw that. Hey, Dave. And that's how naive. And I mean, as a teenager back then, you should have been naive. You shouldn't have known why that was, gross. But had I been maybe in my early 20s, I would have used that. But that was my screen name eventually. It was BJ Dav. And, you would just do cyber sex with anybody. That was kind of the whole excitement of it, right? I mean, it was kind of, they were telling you, oh, I like this. Oh, I'm doing this. Who knows if they were, right? I mean, that's really. And again, this is, like I said, before the days of like webcams and stuff like that, you weren't doing anything like that. But that's, and as a teenager, you were just waiting. You're waiting for your parents. You wanted to have the house to yourself. You were just waiting. There was a show, I can't remember what it was, that somebody had just was talking about that, where that was your thing as a kid, was like you were waiting. I think it was a comedian, a stand-up, right? But just say you were waiting for your parents to leave so that you could just go on dial-up and just go to town. And it's very true. And so it was really mostly the cyber sex thing that was doing it. But then there was eventually found a website. Again, I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically, it said that it was a woman's name. And she either called it like a blanket of men or whatever. And what it was again, the early days, we didn't have, just you could download. She somehow created, and maybe it was in like Paintbrush or one of those really like early image creator programs, she had basically made kind of a collage, is what it was, of naked men. And it was posted about once a week. And really so you would go to the website, whatever it was, and you would click on, this week or whatever the date was or however it was listed. And right at the top of the screen, it would just slowly load. But here's the thing. You do that when people are home. You weren't able to just quickly like minimize or hide it. Or if you did click it, it wouldn't disappear right away. So that was the good thing about our house, was the computer was in the rec room. I always kind of liked it not quite facing. So if you came down the stairs, you would see the screen right away. So I would always kind of sit and angle it and sort of turn the monitor to prevent anybody from seeing it if you clicked and it didn't go away right away. And so I would just download, and this is when you would have a floppy disk. And so you were able to sometimes, depending on how it was, you didn't just do right click and save. I mean, sometimes you had to you might have had the option to click file and save on something. But that image file ended up being so big that you could only have one of those on your not a floppy disk, but the smaller disk. Was that called a floppy disk, or was that different? The floppy disk is the big black one with the hole in the middle, right? That was the floppy disk. I'm talking about the little blue one that had the little metal sort of slider thing on it. That's considered a floppy disk as well. We're going to get some clarification here on our technology. But anyway, my point was that I think you could only store like 1 megabyte or whatever it was on those little disks. And sometimes that image file was so big of the naked man blanket or whatever it was called. And that was something where you would just be like, oh my God, here's naked man after naked man. And so this file ended up being about 20 or 30 maybe, just random pictures. I don't know where she got them. Maybe they were from, Playgirl magazine, and she just took a picture of the Playgirl magazine and then put them all together. But I was very grateful for that website. I don't know how I don't remember how I found it or what I did. Like I said, you weren't Googling things, like you weren't doing very, very specific searches for things on the internet back then. Maybe you typed in naked men. You do that now, you're going to have, right, how many millions of search results. But back then it wasn't very common. But that was my sort of beginning of porn, and that was sort of the outlet, because, you know, I'm not saying that teens should be downloading porn or whatever, and, you know, if it's illegal for them to look at it or whatever. I mean, look at what are the kids. Hey, the kids are out there fucking their brains out and having kids at 14 years old. So I would much rather my kid be, and I can't stand kids and I don't have kids, but I would much rather my kid be jerking off to porn than going and knocking up some slut in his high school. I'm just saying. And that's him keeping it in his pants, and that's her not spreading her. I'm saying it for both of them. I'm not slut shaming. I'm not just going after girls. I'm saying both of them. You kids can be masturbating at home. That's what you can do. You're going to help control the human population. Porn might be illegal if you're under 18 to look at it or buy it or whatever, but you know what? They can do it. They can do it. Let's be real, folks. Moms, dads, you know your kids have access to the porn. Would you rather your kid be looking at a naked photo on the internet or going and getting a disease or getting pregnant or whatever? I think that you're going to want your kid watching porn. Okay. Or just using their imagination. And for me as a creative person, that ended up kind of being... I was able to just sort of run with, you know, mental images or visuals in my head, you know, anyway. But certainly, I mean, when you had that, I have to, you know what, I think that I still have discs from back then. I don't think that we have an actual drive that can, I'm sure we can get one from somewhere. I'm wondering if I still have one of the Blanket of Men files. That would be crazy. I'll have to show my husband that. I'll find it and see what he thinks. If you guys have seen my husband on my Instagram page or whatever, you know, I don't need, that's why we don't have porn. I don't look at it. I don't need it. But, yeah, I mean, it was just such a different time. You know, the games, Wheel of Fortune. I remember my uncle, we had the screen that was orange and black. Really, there was no color to it. And you'd put the big disc in. So that's that big disc I was talking about with the hole in the middle, the circle. And you would hear it like grinding in the computer. And then the Jeopardy logo or something would pop up. And you'd pick your name. And we didn't know any of the answers. I mean, we were like 6, 7 years old. So Wheel of Fortune was always the better game for us. And that was just cool. Like, we would all be gathered around in my uncle's, he had a little home office in his house, I remember. And my cousins, my brothers, me, we would just be, some people would be laying on the desk, you know, behind, looking around, you know, tilting their neck to look at the monitor. It was, I want to play next. And again, if you were to look at that and give that to a kid today, like, here, are you entertained by this? Here, is this game fun for you? They'd be like, what? No. I want 3D, or not 3D glasses. What do you call those? The goggles that you put on, or whatever. You know what I'm talking about, right? I can't think of the name. But VR, that's right. The headsets, you know what I'm talking about. Virtual reality headsets. And they're looking at this going, this like, and the Vanna White on the Wheel of Fortune had like these big, almost looked like she had hooves, or some very big platform shoes or something that she was using to shuffle across the thing. Look it up. I don't want to Google it now because you're the clicking and typing or whatever, but like screenshots of old school Jeopardy computer game or Wheel of Fortune game. I wonder if there's any. I'm going to do it now. I don't care. You know what? Listen to the clicking. Deal with it, everybody. Deal with it. Wheel of Fortune computer game. Oh, 90s. I wonder if I can find some images of that. Oh, I think that was the 80s. The 90s is a little bit. Oh, 1987. Here we are. Here it is. Okay, everybody, Google it. Wheel of Fortune computer game 90s, and then do an image search. Okay. Well, some of these are in color, but definitely there's some that are just that yellow and black that I was talking about. Wow. Takes you back. It really, really does. Anyway, send me an email. Tell me your thoughts. live@jbonair.com. More of the anti-technology episode version 2.0 right after this.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
How many of our younger listeners have ever burned a CD? And I don't mean set it on fire, I mean burned a CD. Do you even know what that term means, youngsters, young whippersnappers? Well, my generation does, and burning CDs ended up being the big thing. Now, you could end up having 10 different, but remember when those rewritable CDs came out? That was the coolest thing. And when then you were downloading songs illegally on Napster, I can't tell you how many CDs I would make. And because I was on the radio, I was an aspiring radio personality even from the time I was a young kid. I would make, just like you would make a mixtape on your little ghetto blaster, back in the day. We called them a ghetto blaster. We didn't call them a stereo. I would do the same thing with CDs, right? You make a mix CD, and I had a Discman. I don't know, is that a brand name? I had a portable CD player, I guess is the generic term. And that was my motivation even just to walk or to go and do things. Because I can take the music on the go. I can go and listen to it. Hey, not bad motivation to get active. I got a membership at the downtown YMCA when I was in high school because I had a CD player that had anti-shock. So I could run the track as I did. Even though, again, I could just run in the neighborhood. But whatever. I ended up getting a gym membership. But I would listen to the CD player as I was running through. And it was just the coolest thing because I could hold it in my hand. I mean, it was a little bit too big to fit in a pocket. You needed a fanny pack. You did. Just like a cell phone. We'll talk about that in a second. But I would take the CD. That was I just made a new CD. That's what I'm going to listen to as I run the track. And you would be able to fit however many songs on it, just like an actual CD you would buy in a store, a record album, right? But it was the songs that you wanted on it. And you would make a CD, and then you might find that it doesn't work in an actual CD player, right? It maybe only works in a computer. Maybe you could only play the songs on a computer. So you needed one that was able to write an actual stereo. So you spend all that time, and then you're like, why isn't it playing? It just spins, nothing happens. Why isn't it working? And then you can start saving your porn to those. Now, when I was moving out of my parents' house, this is very true. I had a filing cabinet that when I worked at Party City and the store went under, when the store closed, when the company went bankrupt and we had to get rid of everything, we stole a bunch of the office furniture and supplies. So I had this big filing cabinet. And because I was, again, an aspiring entrepreneur when I was living with my parents and I had my own little office set up, the top drawer of the filing cabinet had printer paper and a bunch of, and supplies, pens, Post-it notes, whatever. And a shit ton of CDs. So when I was moving out of the house and I had to empty the filing, you want to make things light when you're moving. So I had to empty the drawers from the filing cabinet into boxes. And then when I settled into my house, and I have an office in my spare bedroom in the house. So when I was setting up my office, I looked, you would almost need an entire CD rack. Do you remember a CD rack? Now again, I'm sitting in a radio studio. There is a CD rack of old discs I'm just looking, there's Aqua, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Savage Garden, Spice Girls, Jan Arden, Chantal Kreviazek, there's Saturday Night Fever, there's lots of show tunes. I had a lot of show tunes. It's just here, we don't use them, but it's just kind of fun because I'm like, you know what, we taped, I don't know how many radio shows in the studio, so it seemed fitting to have them in here. But when I got to my home office and I'm setting them up, and I almost had an entire box of CDs. So there was one day, maybe it was a weekend, when, you have those days when it's raining or it's, you're just not doing anything, or you do get a memory of something from back in the day, and now you got to find it, right? Now you want to look to find, see where it is. I know that I still have it. It's somewhere here, right? So I ended up doing that, going, I have a whole bunch of different like family pictures, or I know that we had it recently where somebody had died, and I was like, oh my God, I've got this picture of them from this get together. It's the funniest picture. You know, people do the collage or whatever at a funeral or the slideshow or something. That's why. And I'm going through all these CDs. I ended up making, I don't know how many, speaking of porn earlier, you see all these stories now tie in together. I don't know how many CDs I burnt of, again, it's image files of porn or nudity anyway. It's not necessarily always porn. And then videos, and I would have like cryptic names for them, like like miscellaneous. That was always my code for these are the naughty discs. And again, at home, that was fairly safe. Now, my brothers had already moved out at the time, so they wouldn't have been. But my parents aren't going to be going through, oh, let's look through our kid's business filing cabinet. Oh, it just, and look through the file. I mean, maybe they might have been nosy, but they'd be like, oh, I was publishing like a family newsletter. I was just doing stupid stuff like that. So they wouldn't have. Now, if it was labeled porn or tax returns and I'm 14, they'd be like, really? But, it was fairly safe. Or I would just put like publisher files or, whatever. It had a different name. And so then I didn't realize that until now. Then when I get home and I'm going through them, and now I go and I look at them, and I was like, oh, okay, publish files, okay, miscellaneous. And then I was like, oh, that was my little code, my naming system that I had back then. I'm thinking, oh yes, I found the picture of the family member, and I go and it's a CD of just gay sex. It's so weird to be telling these stories now, right? It's just whatever. It's the things that we do as kids. Like I said, I'm not a porn ad. I've gotten married. I've got a good life. Don't worry. We don't need porn in our relationship. But it's just, that's such an era that's long gone. And then I remember, so speaking of cell phones, back in the day, the cell phones were big. That's always the joke about Saved by the Bell or whatever, right? You had the brick phone or the Zach Morris phone, whatever people called it. But the thing was that they had great reception. I remember being out at the lake. My parents' a cottage north of the city, about an hour. Sometimes the signal was a little bit weird. You had to go onto the beach, like out sort of in the open area. But those were solid phone calls. They were not dropping. You had a good phone call. Now, you had long distance bills that were ridiculous because as soon as you left the outskirts of the city, suddenly, but if somebody called you, it was free. But if you called them into the city, you had to pay. So I remember being, again, about 16, 17 years old. My friends would call me and I'd be sitting out on the deck by myself. My parents weren't out there during the week, so I had the cell phone. I had my parents' cell phone. But it was such a big deal because I remember going to the store with my dad. There was a promotion on a Friday night. It was like midnight. It was very, very late. And I remember going into this store with my dad because he was getting a family cell phone. And the promotion was like midnight or whatever, the deal. And it was just the coolest thing. Like, here we are, we're getting this, this cell phone. And then cell phones went through this weird thing where you wanted them to be smaller and smaller and smaller. Suddenly they weren't these giant phones, they were really small. I had one that was not even the size of the palm of my hand. I can't remember the brand, but it was a little blue phone. Because you weren't doing really, you were maybe texting, you were playing that game Snake, I think was one, where the line would go around the screen and you didn't want to hit yourself or whatever. But the phones, you would get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then eventually they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, that the size of a scientific calculator. Now that's really how old I am. How many kids had a scientific calculator in school? We did. Kids now, it's just called your phone nowadays. But certainly, cell phone technology was completely different too. And you only had the space for 50 contacts in your address book, right? But again, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have all that. So to have 50 contacts, you needed to know a lot of people. Right? Think about that especially if you're like in your early 20s, you didn't have all these social media quote unquote friends. And even then, if you go and look at your phone now, how many of your contacts actually have a phone number attached to them? Maybe your local, coworkers or classmates or whatever. But you might have your friends saved from social media and they're now a contact in your phone, but you don't have their phone number, right? You just, so. But yeah, even just cell phones, the space, the memory on those, you would have what was called a MIDI file. Remember that was used to be like an instrumental version of a song? It was computerized, totally computerized. And that's, you'd have like a ringtone. You could buy ringtones for like $2 and you would have it, Oh yeah, it was the different skins or the face. They were called face plates back then. I think they're called skins now, right? That I had this Nokia one that you could have like red flames, or there was a blue one that had like, again, it looked like lightning bolts kind of a thing, or you just had the general one. You'd change it up every day, whatever. And you didn't have your phone out like crazy. You didn't have your phone out on your desk or whatever. So why did you need 17 different face plates for your phone? Whatever. It was, just because it made you feel cool, whatever. And you had like the little leather case with the little strap that you could hold on to and swing it around. You would have the battery on the back. I remember, I'm speaking of my Nokia, I believe it was, that you would take the battery out. You had a desk charger so that you could either place the phone into it, and then there was a slot in the back for the extra battery. And if you were a talker like me, you went through one battery really quick. And you had that other one on the back up there, charging so that you can swap out the phone battery and you could keep talking. You weren't lost. And yeah, I mean, that was your phones now. And now you need to get a brand new plug every time because they go and change it up when you get a new model or whatever it is. I mean, they're smart on that now. But same thing like I was talking about having to get a new computer. I absolutely hate getting a new phone. I still have my BlackBerry Key 2. They haven't made those in years. And when I actually had two of them sort of crap out because, speaking of cable cords, my factory BlackBerry charging cable stopped working. I thought, okay, I can just go and order one off the internet. Well, how many places are making a BlackBerry cable now? I realize that there's similarities, but when you go to a website and there's a product listing for a BlackBerry charger, be careful. I had this cable that I got from overseas. It zapped two BlackBerry Key 2. One of them was brand new. So I had the one, and when I was hosting our radio shows, the companies, especially BlackBerry, was an advertiser for probably about 10, 12 years. So I would get a new phone maybe every 6 months, but generally at least once a year. So I would stockpile these phones. I had a Key 2 for years. I didn't even use it. It was just sitting in a box. So I had that, loved it. It was a great phone. It's still great. And I always had a backup phone because I never wanted to be caught off guard. If my phone dies, well, I was, hosting radio shows. I needed all this stuff. I needed to have a phone. And so I had a backup. And I thought, I've never lost one phone, gone to another, and then had that one zap out on me. What was the common thread? What was the common denominator in those? Same power cord. So I go to a repair shop and I was like, hey, dude, can you salvage the files from the phone? What can you get out of this? Is there anything on here? What do you get? He's like, how did you have two of them? I said, I think it was the cable because here's what tipped me off. All of a sudden there was a sizzle sound and smoke coming out when I had it plugged in on my laptop when I was on my couch doing some work at home. And I was kind of like, maybe it was the cable, because what would happen with the phone would on a Saturday, it was always a Saturday afternoon, would just restart and then keep restarting. And I was like, that's really weird. Okay, fine. I won't use that phone anymore. Let me just crack open this new one, whatever, because eventually the first one died. And then the second one started doing it. And I thought, what? The phones were never connected to each other. So that wasn't the deal. And I thought, something was with this phone cable. Something with the phone cable is zapping it. It's doing it. Sure enough, the guy at the tech shop says, yep, that's exactly probably what's happening. And I thought, oh, wow. So back in the day, you had just your basic phone that you can clip on the battery, unclip it, charge it, put on another one. And guess what? You never had a phone die on you. You never had a phone crap out. Those were very good phones. So I talk about the BlackBerry Key 2. I have a BlackBerry Classic. Now, the same thing when I went to the shop to get my Key 2s looked at, I showed the guy and I said, and look, I still have a BlackBerry Classic. That phone model, I don't have my phones with me in the room when I do the show, but it's on my desk. That BlackBerry Classic is 12 years old. And I ended up, while I was there, I said to the guy, do you have a battery for these? He's like, yeah, actually, you know what? I do. And I'm the only one in town that has a BlackBerry battery. I said, oh my God. You know what? The battery is kind of dying. I'm able to get maybe 10 minutes of talking on this phone now. I was actually going to look for just another brand new BlackBerry Classic because I didn't realize that you can actually replace the battery on them. Just because it's a solid phone, you're kind of thinking, well, there's no way to get the back off, whatever. He's like, yeah, no, this is how you do it. And I don't remember how much. I think it was like $20 or something for the battery. But he was laughing. He's like, that's still the original battery. At the time, the phone, he said, yeah, it was 10 years old. And I still use it. It's 12 years old now. That is still my phone, my BlackBerry Classic. And that does fit in the palm of your hand. That is my phone for texting, email, and phone calls. I don't do any web surfing or anything on that one, but it's this tiniest little phone. And when people see it, I was actually in a store one day and somebody noticed it. And he said to me, he was in line behind me, which was kind of weird. And he said, "Is that a BlackBerry?" And I kind of thought, okay, first of all, he knows that. That's pretty cool. Secondly, he's looking over my shoulder. That's creepy. Back off, buddy. And he said, "Yo, I had one of those. I love it." And I said, "Yep, still great." It doesn't get to websites anymore, really. Some of them, because it comes up as that it's blocked because it's unsafe or whatever. So it's not. But yeah, for basic texting, email, and phone calls, BlackBerry Classic from 12 years ago. There you go, everybody. It's the classic technology that I appreciate and I love. And like I said, if I could be in that bubble with my old BlackBerry, my VCR, my DVDs of Golden Girls, and my whatever, I'm good. Send me an email, live@jbonair.com.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter @The Scribble Show and @thescribbleshow.com.
JB back here on The Scribble. This is how wonderful my team is and how long we've worked together and how well we know each other. That just when I wrapped up that last segment, I looked and I was like, how much time we got? How much wrapped up? And they're like, no, you're already late. And I said, well, you're late. Why didn't you tell me? Why am I still going if we're out of time? And this is absolutely true. They said, you started talking about BlackBerry, and we knew that you didn't want to be interrupted when you started talking about your BlackBerry, which, hey, I'm not one of those diehards. Like, I'm not one of those who's like live and breathe. When my brother got his first iPhone, he was telling me about his iPhone and trying to convince me. And then they got a Mac computer. This is going back about, 15 years or whatever. And he was converted. He was just convinced that Apple was the end all be all. iPhone was the way to go. Look at your BlackBerry. And I was like, but I don't do all that crap that you're doing. Like I don't need it. I'm fine. It doesn't really matter to me. And I'm not one of those people. I wasn't calling it my Crackberry. I just liked it. It was handy for what I needed to do. And that's that. And so yes, my team was like, no, you kind of started on about BlackBerry and we know that you're passionate about it. And let's be honest, like I said, they were an advertiser on our syndicated radio show for a long time. And they kind of really sort of, well, if I can be blunt, paid for my house, basically. So I do have a bit of an affinity, an affection for BlackBerry, just because why not? And again, a great Canadian company too. So for as much as people went and said, when iPhones became more popular, or Samsung, or all the different brands, people would say the BlackBerry sucked. Well, it did certainly fall behind on the times, but when they licensed the name and the keyboard or whatever it was to another company, and it was on the Android system going forward, then BlackBerrys were really basically just an Android phone. You have your BlackBerry hub, and everything is kind of still the same that way. So it's no different than just a regular Android phone, but it's got your BlackBerry name and the BlackBerry keyboard. And for anybody who's, a regular user of them and doesn't want to let that go, then it's comfy, right? It's home. And yes, I have a key too. So those other two crapped out after the battery, the phone charger destroyed them basically. And so then I ended up getting one as a replacement, and then I was able to find brand new, factory sealed from China, where they're made anyway. And I bought two more. So I've got two backups just in case, just in case something happens with the one that I have. Actually, sorry, I use two of them. I have three phones. I have two BlackBerry Key 2s and then the one BlackBerry Classic. One of them has our e-commerce stores on them, so I do keep sort of things separate. And then the other one has, like I said, the Classic is just used for texting, calling, and email. And then the other one is for our operations of our broadcast and publishing company. So I do have, each one has a different purpose. I'm not a big shot where I've got, three phone holsters on my, no. One of them's for the e-commerce store. Okay, I'm going to deal with those today. I'll grab that phone. One of them's for our radio shows, books, and newspaper stuff. Okay, I grab that one. That's why I've got different ones, because I'm a big shot. There you are. Suck it. Send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. Thanks again for taking this walk down memory lane. I will talk to you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye for now, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter @thescribbleshow. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some